Um, my name is Alexander Bach. I am the co-president of the IE Club of Boston, and welcome you here for a webinar on global trends in e-commerce. Just a quick introduction of all of us bring our interests in entrepreneurial efforts from different places. I'm a clean energy person, but as we all live a life where we spend our time and money on e-commerce, and it's often the leading indicator of how businesses are being set up and changing in our COVID world and our modern world. And for those of you who are in the greater Boston area, we'll be sending you information about our next webinar and other club activities. We got started about 5 years ago. We had a week-long visit from folks around the world from the IE Club, and we will be going back once we're back in session in person, having more events, and we're pleased you're all here. And let me turn over to my co-president, Arnaud.
Hi, my name is Arnaud Lucas. I'm a director of engineering at Wayfair, but I'm also the co-president of the Boston chapter of the IE Club. And so we're starting a new webinar series as part of a little bit of a reboot of the Boston IE Club chapter here. And the webinar series is really about how different industries are really tackling global trends in specifically e-commerce. And so the first webinar today is about customers' global trends in e-commerce. So focusing more on that customer aspect and the impact there. The next webinar will actually be on April 26th at noon. So it's a Tuesday again. So looking forward to seeing you there as well. And that second webinar will focus on the logistics aspect of e-commerce and the impact from the pandemic, the cost, complications, and present and future. So now what I would like to do is actually introduce our keynote speaker. So Steve Conine is actually with us today, and it's very much my pleasure to introduce him as our keynote speaker today. So Steve is actually the co-founder and co-chairman of Wayfair, one of the largest destinations for everything home. And Wayfair now offers more than 18 million products, generated more than 15 billion revenues in 2021 alone. And Steve leads many innovations that give Wayfair that kind of technical or technological edge, from software system to augmented reality to artificial intelligence. And prior to co-founding Wayfair, Steve actually co-founded Spinners Incorporated, which was an IT service firm. Spinner was actually sold to IXL in 1998. Today, Steve is actually a member of the board of directors of CarGurus, which is a global online automotive marketplace. In his spare time, Steve loves to do competitive mountain biking. He travels internationally to even compete in races. So it's kind of serious about it. And when he's not in a race, he's actually at home completing another woodworking project. And he enjoys outdoor activities like wakeboarding, ice carving. We had the demo during our latest get-together, stand-up paddle boarding, and flying quadcopters. So Steve is here today to tell us more about his journey in e-commerce.
All right. Well, thanks, Arnaud. And I appreciate the intro. I feel like I sound a lot cooler in that than my self-image is, but I appreciate it. So yeah, I've I guess the privilege of having the first 10 minutes here to kick this off. So I'm going to try to hit a few things and keep us on time. But I just by way of background, Arnaud introduced a bit of my background, but we started Wayfair here in Boston in 2002. We, as myself and Neeraj Shah and I are old college friends from Cornell we graduated in 95 and have been working together since then. And we started Wayfair in 2002. And at the time, I guess we didn't really appreciate it, but we got very excited about e-commerce, and we saw a really big opportunity in e-commerce. We'd started two companies prior to Wayfair that were more in the services software space. Spinners was very much a services company, a consulting company, and e-commerce was a very new opportunity for us. But it's been a phenomenal opportunity, and we've created a lot of success out of it. In the early years, Wayfair was actually called CSN Stores, and we had a very different model when we started the business, where we ran a lot of microsites. Basically, gave us a really neat platform to experiment with a lot of different categories and figure out kind of what you needed to build to make a great e-commerce experience. And we rebranded all of our microsites into Wayfair back in 2012. We actually kind of first announced the name, I think, in 2011. 2012, we formally redirected all our sites. The business went public in 2014, which was a nice milestone for us. We used a lot of actually the funds from our IPO to invest in the operations and logistics side of the business, and that's obviously paid dividends for us, particularly during the pandemic period here, where we've seen phenomenal growth. And we've really managed this business through 20 years, where it's, this is our 20th anniversary, and we've seen it go through a lot of changes, and both periods of heady growth as well as periods of less heady growth and challenges. And it's been a really, rewarding experience, and it's been a great team that we put together that runs it. So Arnaud asked me to give a couple of minutes on just some thoughts or tips and techniques, I guess, from a founder on things maybe to pass, I don't know, wisdom on to other founders and innovators who are excited about getting into being an entrepreneur and maybe in the e-commerce. In e-commerce in particular, people ask me a lot, like, is there still opportunity in e-commerce? And really what they're asking is there opportunity in retail? And retail, there is absolutely opportunity in retail. I mean, e-commerce and retail they're huge markets. I always remember looking at, when we started Wayfair, 2/3 of the GDP of the US is consumer spending, which is basically retail. And so the really neat thing about retail and e-commerce has been, it's a business where if you get into it and you start getting momentum, you start chipping away at it, you can get very large. And so, I think as an entrepreneur, one of the things you always struggle with is like, what scale do I want to take a business to? And, do I want to build it as a lifestyle business? Do I want to build it as, a major corporation? Or, how do I want it to evolve? Do I want to exit it? One of the things about I have found really neat in e-commerce is that it is a business where if you want to keep going, there's sort of always opportunity. And some of the largest businesses in the world are retailers. And so there's sort of always opportunity to keep growing and keep, improving the experience and going after, bigger customers and, or bigger customer segments and new market opportunities. And so it's a really fun market to get to in that. So as you think about, one of the tips I would just say is, like, as you think about the markets you're going into and what type of business you want to build, e-commerce is definitely one of those areas where if you want to get really large, you can. It's also got great opportunity for niche businesses. And there's really interesting, specific players that have lots of, whether it's websites or stores that can do very well and can carve out a niche for themselves and create a very nice lifestyle business. So it's a very interesting landscape in that standpoint. The other tip I would say is, like, e-commerce, and I think a lot of entrepreneurship, but e-commerce in particular, it's 99% execution. E-commerce and retail is something all of us do, we all understand. And the next generation of great retailers tend to be the ones who are just incrementally innovating over what's been done prior. Since I was young, I've seen a lot of national retailers. I guess, every generation, maybe thinking different, every generation in the US has had major retailers, right? There were Sears and Macy's, and then Woolworths and Kmart, and then you had Walmart come along, and then obviously Amazon has been a dominant one. Our goal is for Wayfair to be one of the major brands of e-commerce or retail over the next, generations, but every generation has them, and they tend to be, it tends to be an area where it's all about execution, and it's about a team that can pull a group of people together who they can passionately motivate to go after it. Maintaining good unit economics along the way, I think, is also very important. I think there's an opportunity. I've seen a lot of e-commerce companies raise a lot of money, which can lead to bad behavior. And I think that becomes easy to give stuff away and end up with bad unit economics. And so one of the things I think we debated a lot, and we didn't raise money in this business really until 2011. And then in 2014, we went public. But we ran the business just self-funded it for 10 years, basically out of the cash flow of the business. We just ran good unit economics and created good discipline in the business. And it sort of forces good behavior and good decision-making in a way that if you go out and raise a lot of money, it can change. So, if you're thinking about e-commerce, I would encourage you to think about self-funding as far as you can, that actually even though it may feel like you're slowing your pace, you're probably doing smarter things that will end up giving you a more durable outcome than if you try to really, just dump money into it early on. Good cultures matter a lot. We've been very deliberate about the culture we have at Wayfair. It's one of the things in the first two companies I wasn't deliberate about, and having a great culture is really one of the things that differentiates you against your competitors. on that front, watching competitors is definitely important, but I would be careful about reacting to competitors. I think we've done a very good job of watching customers and reacting to customer behavior and watching customer metrics and really reacting to that and servicing customers, not really worrying about competitors. Obviously, you're going to have competitors. Retail and e-commerce is, it's filled with them. And you're always trying to chip away at that, but I wouldn't obsess about that. Working in customer service and doing service yourself, if you're starting an e-commerce company, I would highly recommend. It was critical for us. And then you got to want to sell. E-commerce and retail is selling, and even I think any sort of entrepreneurial venture, a lot of it is selling. Can you sell your idea? Can you get people to actually invest in it? Those are a few. I don't know. Hopefully, there's some tidbits in there. Those are a few tips that I just came to mind. Around my journey as a founder. The last thing I probably sort of close my time here with all of you is just to give some thoughts on sort of the state of the evolution, I guess, of online catalogs. And we've started to think about doing physical stores, but it's been very interesting for me in the last 20 years. So when we started Wayfair, something like 5% of home was sold online. So a tiny fraction, right? 95% was sold offline. We were a tiny customer of any supplier we worked with. And so you'd look at the physical side of it and say, wow, that's really where the majority of stuff sold. That's chipped up over time, right? So back in 2002, I think if you'd asked me, hey, Steve, what percentage do you think of home could be sold online? I probably would have said 25, 30%, somewhere in there hits a saturation point, and you start to say, well, there's physical stores is going to obviously have a big share of it. Today, I think, it's easily going to get to 50%, where half the home market sold online. You're going to still have, though, a big chunk of the home market sold offline. The pandemic has really been a sea change in the number of people who are willing to try shopping for home online. And so one of the things we've seen during the pandemic is just a huge section of customers who've never tried online before have tried it. And what we've seen historically is once people try it, they may not go right back to it, but now that they've sort of experienced it, and if the experience has been great, and we've certainly tried to make it great on our platforms, eventually they will get back to trying it again. And in the last few years here, we've really seen an acceleration of first-time adopters, which we think will really be a real tailwind to us over the next few years. We've just started to talk publicly about moving into physical bricks and mortar, and I always smile when I look back, because when we started this company, Neeraj and I swore we'd never do anything in bricks and mortar. We'd never do catalogs. We started doing catalogs a number of years ago. We're just starting to get into physical retail. I think, as we've looked at the addressable market we go after, and this hypothesis that at some point it saturates out, you're going to have a big chunk of home that's still sold offline. And so how do you go after that field of opportunity? You need to figure out how to do physical bricks and mortar. We get very excited about it. In addition, because we think the economics for us could be particularly well. We obviously have a big online presence. We've built a national operations network that can ship things all over the country and all over the globe and different markets we're in. And so we already have the operations sort of underpinning that a lot of physical retailers would need to invest in if they're trying to become a national physical retailer. We also have the marketing. And so we've built out a real dominant brand in the markets we're in. We spend a tremendous amount, or we spend we think it's a reasonable amount, but it's a large dollar amount on every form of advertising you can basically do. So we've built awareness for the brand, which will really, we think help as we get into doing physical stores and creating kind of a new surface area for customers to interact with us. And so, we're sort of watching the online penetration continue to grow. We believe it's going to continue to grow, but as it starts to get to, say 50% online, we think that figuring out how to service customers in other channels is going to be important. And the pairing of kind of physical stores with all the infrastructure and the operations and the logistics we have capabilities around is very exciting for us. So, so we're moving in that direction. The pandemic has certainly, helped accelerate parts of it, and certainly has given us a very good clarity on what to focus on. One of the things about seeing your sales go from kind of, a level you're used to kind of like basically promotion level sales week after week after week for, months, is you really understand where the bottlenecks are and where the pain points are with customers. And so, the clarity we have on what we're focusing on, what our teams are investing in has really increased over the last years. And so it's been a fun time to be involved in this industry. With that, I think I'm just at about 10 minutes. So there's an interesting panel group that they put together for you here today. So they're going to cover a lot of topics, I know, between pandemic and competition and some trends in tech. So hopefully you will all enjoy it, and I will hand it back over.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much. I would like now actually to introduce Sarah because she's the founder and CEO of Incisme, with a French startup in food tech. But she's also the member of the executive committee of the AI Club. But today, she's actually our panel moderator. So Sarah, take it away.
Thank you, Arno. And thank you, Steve, for sharing all these valuable insights. And hello, everyone. We're very excited to share with you some of the retail secrets to e-commerce success and from industry experts that are here with us today. So on our panel of experts is Lauren Sidworth, head of global content marketing at Shopify. So for those who don't know, founded in 2006, Shopify is a Canadian multinational e-commerce company with a software platform for online stores. So after a rich career as digital copywriter, global brand director, Lauren took over the exciting role of head of global content marketing at Shopify. Hi, Lauren. Thanks for being with us. Our second panelist is Namrata Ganatra, former CTO of Silicon Valley-based Landa School. Namrata was an engineering leader at top companies like Coinbase, Facebook, PayPal, and Microsoft, and has founded an AI-based e-commerce growth platform called StorePath that was later acquired by 3CO, and which is helping e-commerce businesses expand across different channels and countries. Also joining us today is Damien Bon, the CEO of the leading last mile delivery platform Sidworth that connects small and big businesses to a fleet of geolocalized couriers. They work across verticals with retailers, grocery stores, restaurants, and e-commerce merchants. So their mission is to provide logistics for a sustainable world. And our fourth panelist is Anand Contractor, head of storefront and customer technology at Wayfair, one of the world's leading online retailers. So prior to joining Wayfair, Anand worked for top players such as Walmart, American Express, and PayPal, tackling topics like digital acquisition, online stores, and customer experience. So without further ado, let's discover what these top global brands are focusing on for 2022 and how the future of commerce is changing. So as internet access and adoption are rapidly increasing worldwide, the number of customers online is climbing every year. In 2020, over 2 billion people purchased goods and services online. And during the same year, e-retail sales surpassed $4.2 trillion worldwide. So my first question goes to Damien. Can you tell us how has COVID impacted your company and the behavior of your customers overall?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sarah, for the introduction. I mean, we are an on-demand delivery platform, so we are relatively well connected to the e-commerce industry. Though I'm not going to share any revolutionary message. E-commerce has definitely accelerated over the pandemic, essentially boosted by all the public health restriction and measures in general. Now, what's more interesting is to understand if anything has changed, I would say, beside the sector growing at an accelerated pace. So let me try to share with you some underlying trends we've seen both from a consumer and merchant perspective when it comes to delivery expectation in Europe. So I will start maybe with the e-shoppers. So first, I guess people spend more time at home, you would intuitively expect the shopping experience to improve over the pandemic. It precisely turned out the opposite happened, and that the shopping experience is perceived as more difficult today than before pandemic. And I guess it essentially comes down to more demanding customer. Most of the growth has actually been driven by more regular shoppers. So we've heard Steve saying that obviously they are first-time online shoppers. But again, if you look at the share of online volume in Europe, it's essentially driven by a regular shopper, which represents half of European online consumer and 85% of total volume in Europe. Now, specifically around the delivery experience, which is the Sidworth core mission, e-shoppers are expecting more than ever real-time information, several delivery options, and most importantly, time slot deliveries, which is essentially the capacity to select a 1 hour delivery time slot in advance. Second trend when it comes to e-shoppers is COVID has enabled the emergence of new categories. We've seen a sharp increase in a category like food, fresh products, and grocery. And I guess the disruption from the quick commerce players such as GoPuff in the US or Getir in Korea is just the tip of the iceberg here. Last, maybe a quick word on sustainability, which is obviously an important theme. While green e-commerce is still widely appreciated by e-shoppers, we unfortunately don't see a major evolution overall. Shoppers tend to associate the green purchase a lot more with the product than the delivery itself. And it's still not a top key decision criteria. In fact, the consumers that are heavily sensitive to sustainability tend to reduce in general their consumption overall, and few customers are ready to pay a premium for environmentally friendly products or services. Now, very quickly speaking about merchants, what we've seen from our own research is that the COVID has accelerated retailers' delivery plan by about 3 to 5 years, as essentially consumer expectations have grown to expect fast, precise, convenient delivery offering at checkout. With such an increase in online penetration, further investment in supply chains are happening at an accelerated pace, which ultimately means that topics like next day delivery is facilitated and now becomes the norm, which in turn comes with a lot of pressure on e-commerce players to find other levers to stand out from the crowd, as well as optimize their delivery P&L. And that's where stores can start playing a critical role to enable speed and ultimately optimize cost. And we've seen that big trend happening, obviously, because we are very much an expert in the ship from store segment. So at the same time, stores became disused because of the pandemic. Now, with every challenge comes an opportunity, and so some retailers have been able to leverage their store network not only to stock their online orders, because sometimes they were lacking capacity in their fulfillment centers, but also to ship product in a much more sustainable and efficient way to end consumer. And now that stores have essentially reopened, we can see the advantage of operating a hybrid store model, both as a branch touch point and as an urban warehouse. So in summary, obviously, huge growth over the period, but I would say customers, as opposed to, an intuition, which would be that, people are at home, so probably less demanding in terms of delivery experience, that actually the opposite is because we have more frequent purchaser. People are actually more demanding because they buy more online. And so their expectation when it comes to delivery have increased, and they essentially always expect, speed, convenience, and precision.
Thank you very much, Damien. Anna, did you notice similar consumer behavior during the pandemic or post-pandemic?
Yeah, hey. So, Damien, thanks for providing such a good insight from the stores and physical retail point of view. I have to break it down, the COVID impact for our business at Wayfair. First of all, home category really accelerated. Steve mentioned that we saw phenomenal growth, during this time. But if I have to break it down, the why, pandemic also created the pattern, for the customers to stay home, more often. And so for the home category, the investment or the dollar that was being shifted in terms of a spend was going towards decorating the homes and also preparing for the kind of remote workforce. That also accelerated, home category quite a bit. Steve also mentioned that, retail is 99% execution. So I also want to provide a point of view from the operations point of view. Retail, we really need to nail the operations. And Damien talked a lot about the delivery, side of the world, but it's the entire, I would say, starting from what our customers are shopping and how do we accelerate kind of, the serving for our, accelerated traffic, preparing from our tech operations to kind of, what our customers are looking for in terms of category specific, experiences. So a lot of investment went into kind of, that part. But that's not kind of, enough. There were for retailer or commerce as a whole during pandemic, it has created the supply chain issue and availability of our products in general. So how do we manage that effectively? How do we kind of make the shopping easier without kind of adding frustration for the customers in terms of what is available and what is not available, how to think about their order and lead times for things that are arriving. All of that kind of factored into the kind of creating the experiences for the customers. The shopping patterns were different, expectations have been different, but at the same time the demand in the home category was kind of quite high, and those who experience the shopping of this category during the pandemic, they are likely to come back because the inertia, initial inertia of like, hey, am I going to get the right product, the right color, the right attributes of what I'm shopping for. Once that validation happens, the customer confidence with buying online has been going just getting better and better during this time.
Thank you, Anna. Staying on the topic of customers and customer expectations, Lauren, did you foresee any current consumer trends at Shopify, whether it is, I don't know, social media, personal shopping, community-driven shopping?
Yes. So my team has been working on our Future of Commerce report for 2022 for the last few months. And we're really seeing three key trends emerge in 2022 for e-commerce. And those are increased competition, which I think Steve and others has already spoken to, data privacy concerns and the impact on the reduction of kind of rich data available to merchants, and then social commerce. So competition across the board with retail and online is going to be one of the biggest challenges for brands in 2022. As we've heard, consumers have been driven online during the pandemic, and retailers and merchants have followed them online. And that has meant increased competition and a massive increase in the cost of digital marketing and digital acquisition. And so, for example, the cost per click for paid search ads increased by 15% in one quarter in 2021. So there is just like a massive additional cost associated with digital acquisition of customers now. The second trend, data privacy. So there are changing consumer attitudes and regulations from Apple and Google coming into place, and it's going to get a lot harder to track and retarget consumers across the web. And nearly a third of brands expect data privacy changes to hinder their growth in 2022, and that's from a survey we ran with Forrester. And then the third trend, social commerce, is more of a kind of opportunity than a challenge. And social commerce is something I'm really bullish about. It's a market expected to be worth $2.9 trillion by 2025. And we're increasingly seeing consumers completing checkouts directly through social channels. So experiencing kind of all of the commerce customer journey in social. And that has led to experimentation with things like live selling, which is already massive in Southeast Asia, video consultations, personalized product recommendations, and shoppable video. And so in one quarter of 2021, on the Shopify platform, we saw installs for live selling apps increase by 40%. So this is a trend that is gaining traction very, very quickly. And I think just the upshot of all of this for brands in 2022, and what we're recommending, is investing in community and long-term brand building. That doesn't mean turning off kind of paid ads and short-term performance marketing, but it means investing in kind of long-term brand differentiation and brand marketing alongside that kind of performance marketing, and then also looking at opportunities to build community so you can get that customer data in creative ways. once that's kind of turned off by Google and Apple, and testing new channels. There's a ton of opportunity in things like video games, social commerce, live streaming, and also showrooming on the retail side as well. So tons of new channels emerging for brands to explore.
Thank you, Lauren. That's super interesting. And we can see that in a very short amount of time, there's been a lot of changes and that the community is driving a lot of these changes. Namrata, is there any technologies or services that you had to innovate in to provide your customers in order to remain competitive?
Yeah, so we have a lot of innovation in the e-commerce space in just past couple of years, and primarily that's due to also e-commerce acceleration because of COVID. Damien and Annan of the innovation in the supply chain and operations, but I'll share a couple of examples of the innovative tech that we built at my company StorePath, which is now part of Thrashio, and we built a bunch of innovation around product launch, because what we figured, or what we at least got experience, is that launching product and making the product launch successful was one of the problems that a lot of e-commerce businesses, especially small and medium businesses, were encountering. So some of the tech that we built was one of them was artificial intelligence-based copy creator, right? So in order to sell your products on any e-commerce channels, you need title, descriptions, and SEO optimized product copy, which is really time-consuming process, but also it requires kind of thorough, keyword research and copywriting skills, which a lot of e-commerce brands didn't have that, or it was really time-consuming for them. So we built OpenAI based GPT-3 model, which generates the product copy automatically. So you just give kind of the brand name and what you're selling, and it automatically creates a product copy based on millions of e-commerce product listings and their similarity and the score and the product listing that's already SEO optimized. So this helped a ton of e-commerce businesses to launch the product and instantly become successful in terms of attracting organic traffic on their store. And then another example, which is also around product launch, is kind of the augmented based image creator tool that we built. You give the raw image of the product and you could place it on a plain background that's required for different e-commerce channels, or choose from a templated backgrounds without having to do photo shoots for product images. So these were some of the examples of AI-based and augmented reality-based tools that we built, along with some of the innovation in supply chain and operations that we touched on before.
Thank you so much for these insights. It shows so much that the opportunities for innovation in the space are huge. And as we know, that B2C commerce is going to continue to skyrocket, and we're expected to have a compound annual growth of 9.7% until 2028. So that's huge. With the digital dependency, the convenience of online shopping, and the fast-growing digital population and the use of smartphones, we can see that businesses are forced to provide a specific experience to their customers. Anna, maybe could you share your insights on the types of experiences that your customers are expecting? We're speaking of emotionally fulfilling, frictionless, experimental. Do you have any of these that apply to your business?
Yeah, and when we talk about home shopping, and we talked about this social phenomenon that's kind of being created in terms of validations of what's being kind of purchased, and how that kind of sticks with your circles, right, your social circles around it. But when I kind of break it down, is really good customer experience. The very foundation of that is that a reliable experience? Is this secure experience? Are we really looking into the data privacy and protecting the customer in shopping with us? So those are some of the fundamentals. If you don't have that, then the customer is not going to shop with you or come back. And so to me, that's really the backbone of creating the frictionless, experience for your customer. Then once you have achieved that, then you really need to start thinking about, you don't have one type of customer. So how you venture into personalization, starts with how you're differentiating for different types of customers. At Wayfair, we sell across so many different categories. Like many times, people are surprised when they find out that Wayfair sells in the categories of kind of home improvements and appliances. We are not just into the furniture and decor business, which is the most prominent business that people think about. So when you're talking about your home, you have emotional attachment with building that home, building that space that speaks about who you are and speaks about your style and day-to-day kind of how you live within that. What our customers are looking at is really inspiration, and how do we inspire them to know that this is the piece that's going to fit into your space, really kind of to your own preferences and your social kind of preferences around you. It requires guidance and education. So are we really guiding our customers? And that guidance can come from customer doing their own research, and how are we providing them different services in terms of creating their experience from during the shopping time. And then you mentioned emotionally fulfilling, and to us that's the nirvana. Because home where you are growing your family and building your family needs to have that emotional kind of attachment to it. And when we think about the brands that are emotionally fulfilling for us, it's very highly personal. So how do we know what fulfills our customer and create that kind of relationship with the customers in terms of making that happen? And whenever it comes to kind of thinking about home, they know that Wayfair knows me, and Wayfair can kind of fulfill that for me. So that to me is really amazing customer experience. I would mention that I talked a lot about shopping experiences in this context, but it's not just about shopping experiences. You can have amazing shopping experience. You're looking for what it is, but if your entire life cycle of working with Wayfair is not kind of truly amazing, it breaks that trust in between. So that building that experience goes beyond specifically kind of the shopping, and making sure that the delivery and shipping experiences are equally kind of we are meeting the customer promise, we are wowing them in that. And then when it comes to for example, sometimes things don't go the way they are supposed to. So when it comes to return experiences, how do we deal with that post-order experiences with our customers, make them feel that look, Wayfair is here to take care of you? I think that part really kind of is a cherry on top of everything that comes together.
Yeah, so data privacy, experience, guidance, personalization, they seem to be words that are applied for most of the future experiences, customer experiences that we want to provide for the world. We also witnessed a clear evolution between the physical and the digital commerce. So I myself with my company am trying to bring the benefits of the digital to the on-site dining experience in the food tech business. Lauren, how do you foresee the evolution of both worlds at Shopify?
Yeah, so obviously it's been a rocky road for retailers, physical retailers, over the last couple of years. And competition has not left retailers alone. So two trends we're seeing: competition again and omni-channel. And it was really interesting to hear Steve talk from the perspective of Wayfarer and the fact that they're making moves into physical retail, because that is something we're seeing across the board with D2C brands who've built up this online brand, have built up their operations, and are now kind of seeing an opportunity to move into cheaper retail and take advantage of that foot traffic that is coming back. And actually nearly a third of the brands we surveyed for our reports are moving into physical retail for the first time or expanding their physical footprint. And that means competition is going to be fierce offline as well as online over the next couple of years. And in addition to that, another major trend or new expectation we've seen from consumers is omni-channel. And so customers wanting to check out online, but return something in store, or look at a product in store and basically showroom and then go and buy that online. And our report found that nearly half of North American shoppers are significantly more likely to order a product if they can check out online and return in store. So this is kind of a growing expectation that is not going to go anywhere. And that means businesses have to take an omni-channel approach. This is something we've been talking about for many years, but is still a challenge for a lot of businesses. And half of brands say that breaking down organizational silos between digital and physical is going to be one of their biggest challenges over the next year. So that operations piece, having a single source of customer data, getting all of your operations buttoned up before you make that move is going to be really important, as well as the brand piece. And so a ton of merchants are investing in showrooming, and we're seeing really interesting kind of moves around building brand affinity and community through things like events, workshops, and brand collaborations, and really using that physical space as kind of a brand building center.
Thank you, Lauren. Talking about collaborations, there's been like a huge trends of startups being created in the past few years. And also with the pandemic, there's been a lot of opportunities also coming up. My question goes to Damien. Do you see, well, what are the opportunities that you see in partnering with startups or other companies? Or I know that you have experience in this field. Your company has been bought by a large group. So is there any insight that you could tell us on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, it comes down to the topic of innovation. I think that the startup having the ecosystem have in common to be focused on a very clear problem and a very clear pain point. And I do believe that if you want, breakthrough innovation to happen at a very rapid pace, you need dedicated resource on similar topics. So obviously, partnering with startup is one way to achieve to bring innovation to life. There are obviously many ways. So on our end, on one way, we're still looking at the startup ecosystem being, a bit more advanced and see what can be outsourced to new startups. So, being an on-demand delivery platform, obviously on themes such as new transport types, we are partnering with some startups investing into new ways to transport goods within the urban logistic world. And also on topics such as routing optimization, we're trying to partner with companies being innovative in that space, knowing at any point of time what we absolutely need to do ourselves. And so we can start by partnering with startup, and when it comes to scaling, then at some point there is a need for us to re-internalize operations. At the same time, being part of a larger group, following our acquisition, we can also see what's the internal decision-making process. And most of the time, again, it's not about being innovative, it's how you scale innovation and how do you reconcile that as a larger group within the rest of your offering without cannibalizing your current customer base, etc. So it's definitely not an easy one. I say if you having been acquired by a group, I'd say as a recommendation for a larger group, it might be good once you acquire a company to let a bit of autonomy before actually pushing any type of synergy and cooperation. But obviously, I do believe given the financing and all the resources that the startup world has at the moment, it's super important to remain close to that ecosystem to see if there is any opportunity emerging. So yeah, I'd say it's super important, but at the same time, you also need to know very clearly what you want to operate internally as well.
Thank you, Damien. Namrata, I believe you also can provide us some insight on your experience.
Yeah, I think as Damien mentioned, there's just so much innovation in the e-commerce space that has happened that it just gives us the opportunity to partner with startups. And also there are opportunities for great exit strategies and exit opportunities for companies. So some examples that comes to mind is really the opportunities around the customer journey, to what Anand mentioned around building the customer experience that's frictionless, that's personalized. So partnering with better checkout experiences like Shop Pay and one-click checkout experiences is an example that comes to mind. There are a bunch of other innovative engagement marketing startups and tools available like Klaviyo that's really gained traction in the past few years. And then there are also a bunch of paid marketing startups that you can partner with, such as Quartile and Techametrics, to automate your paid marketing initiatives. So there are just tons of opportunities and tons of innovation. And the great thing about these partnerships is that the startups are focused on one specific, initiative and one specific area. So you have the opportunity to kind of partner with a bunch of these startups and optimize the customer journey and customer experience end to end on your e-commerce store. So I really like that. And then last but not the least is great exit opportunities for e-commerce startups who've reached the scaling ceiling to be acquired by someone like Thrasio or the likes.
That's great. Thanks a lot. We have about 12 minutes left, and we have a question from the audience. Victoire is asking about the environmental impact of e-commerce and the growing awareness among customers. So she's asking, do you think this is a current trend in the industry, and how can e-commerce respond to the growing demand for transparency regarding the environmental impact, especially for e-commerce in general, but for also delivery? So maybe, not sure who would like to give a word on this.
I'm happy to take that one for the delivery
Sure.
part, obviously. Well, I think that there are plenty of studies on what the net impact of e-commerce in general, especially the delivery part. I'd say overall, there is a consensus that it's positive whenever all the different mile, middle mile, last mile are moved to green transportation in general. Why is that? Simply because physical shopping usually is associated to people using their own vehicle to go to a commercial center, to the city center, etc., to do their shopping. And obviously, the capacity utilization of the vehicle is not fully optimized, as opposed to a truck, a van being filled with of parcels. Now, again, if you're walking to the store, then obviously you can debate whether that's the same impact or not. But overall, I'd say that the figures are relatively positive for e-commerce whenever, again, the middle mile part and the last mile are done using eco-friendly transport type. Now, when it comes to the transparency, that's where it's become very, very difficult, because every carrier is using a different framework. So there is no global standard. I do believe, Amazon and other players are trying to be part of working groups to try to work on a standard. And obviously, you would expect then e-commerce company to share at checkout or before what would be the impact of on the overall supply chain. So I do expect, meaningful improvement to be made in the next 5 years, but we are far from being able to provide transparency on the entire supply chain. I guess the last mile is relatively easy, but it's more complicated than that with all the cross-border flows. It's not an easy one to tackle, but we have meaningful progress. So let's see the positive, and hopefully within the next 5 years we'll be able to share with the end consumer full transparency on the impact on the environment in general.
To build on Damien's answer, so sustainability is a trend we're seeing, especially in the shipping and logistics space. One of, I think, the biggest risks to brands over the next couple of years, because this is definitely a long-term trend that's gaining traction, but I think has yet to kind of bear fruits. One of the biggest concerns we have is around greenwashing, and the fact that today sustainability is sitting in the marketing department rather than as part of kind of the deeper ingrained business strategy, or with all of the teams working on operations, shipping and logistics. And so a big risk is going to be consumers calling them out and choosing to shop elsewhere when those green credentials are not really living up to expectations. Another thing to consider is that in our research, and this was a surprise to me, that the correlation between sustainability and social impact, you can't really pull those two things apart, and you can't have a sustainable supply chain if there are still kind of major ethical issues around the treatment of workers in the supply chain. Being really investing time in deciding who your partners are, auditing your business and their businesses, and setting kind of clear principles and goals around what you want to get out of those partnerships, and then being transparent around that is going to be very, very important, because eventually stakeholders, consumers and governments are going to be holding businesses accountable, and it's better to get ahead of it now and be one of the first to market. And there's some really fascinating stuff going on. For example, Pella replacing plastic goods like sunglasses and phone cases, and basically building one sustainable product at a time. I think there's a ton of really exciting stuff going on, but greenwashing is a big concern.
Definitely, it's an amazing challenge for the e-commerce industry. Anna, maybe you want to say a word?
Yeah. No, I think, my colleagues here said a lot of kind of, points here. One thing I would like to kind of bring the attention to with the whole pandemic situation going to e-commerce, there is a consumption of, from the server farms, point of view, and how we are thinking about with personalization, with increased kind of, data analytics. All of that has a cost involved from a computing point of view. And I was reading this kind of, numbers that the carbon dioxide, like CO2 emission increase, just because of the number of data center and increase in terms of the computing that has happened and the impact of that, onto the environment as a whole. What can we do, in a technology organization, right? I mean, to the point of it cannot sit within marketing. Every single organization and function needs to think about, environment. And I would say that how are we treating our unutilized capacity of our servers, so that we are running efficient business, we are providing customer experiences, but not at a cost of, that carbon emission, and how kind of, our server farms are running around. So that's the point I would like to add here.
Thank you. Thank you, Anand. Maybe one last word, Namrata, to close this topic.
I think Lauren and Anand covered everything. I would only say that along with us as organizations being responsible for carbon emissions and employing more sustainable practices, I think there is also big awareness in the consumers that I've seen in the past couple of years. There are just environmentally friendly products usage have increased significantly, and we've seen that in the numbers completely. And there is also brands who are just kind of now moving from really kind of the physical product that are not environmental friendly to an environmentally products and sustainable products. So I think that is this shift and trend in the consumer industry that we are seeing. It's going to kind of enforce every company and organization to think about kind of changing their practices to become more environment friendly. So I'd say it's the trend that we are seeing from both sides, and I'm excited for this to have a positive impact on the environment.
Thanks a lot, Namrata. It's clear that we've been living a crazy couple of years, and there's huge changes towards the e-commerce industry, a lot of challenges, but it's super exciting to see all of you and all of what you've been doing or planning to do in the future. So thank you all for participating and sharing your valuable insights with everyone. I'm sure the audience is delighted. So I will pass it on now to Maurice for the conclusion.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you all. A few words to conclude this very interesting, inspiring event on e-commerce. I would like to start by thanking the founders of the IE Club in Boston, the chapter in Boston, especially Beverly Kahn and Alex Bach, who started about 7 years ago, who did at the time a great trip organized for the members around the world to visit and to get inspired by meeting different entrepreneurs in Boston. I would like also to thank all the members who work with Alex, with Bev, with the different members organizing different events around entrepreneurship. And last but not least, thank you, Arnaud, who joined recently and who now, in a capacity of co-president with Alex, has now done a tremendous job by co-organizing this this webinar, which is the first in a series of 2 webinars on e-commerce. Tonight's webinar was very inspiring. We heard of somebody who has done quite a bit in e-commerce and who has raised the company from the founding stages to one of the largest successes in the US. Steve Conan, and hopefully Steve is listening to us, but Steve has done something very inspiring for the generations to come. And he said something which I thought was very interesting. He reminded us of the importance of self-funding a company. The company is built with fundraising, but if one can also self-fund, it's a testimony on the strength of it in the market. So this is very well said and very inspiring. Then we had the round table. Thank you, Sarah, for organizing. So Sarah, the founder of Eats Easy. I'm gonna maybe resume the spirit of Eats Easy as the link between the physical and the digital. So you bring solutions for the physical world, for the restaurants by implementing digital solutions. And I think we are here to hear on entrepreneurs who build solutions, sometimes in the digital world and sometimes from the digital to the physical. So it's very inspiring. And we heard from Lauren Sidworth. And I'm gonna note 3 things you said, Lauren. One, about increased competition. I think we all see it. Very important to be aware of it. Data privacy. We see so many companies not deal with it in a strong way. And finally, the social and the major opportunities in the space. So thank you, Lauren, for sharing those insights with us. Namrata brought in AI and reality-based solutions. Very inspiring. Thank you, Namrata. Damien spoke about the last mile, which I think is a major challenge when you are in e-commerce. This is where a lot of the experience positive happens when the last mile is dealt with positively. And then Anand explaining to us how technology has to be blended with inspiration as ingredients for a great website. So having said that, and I'm moving to negative territory here, it's 1 minute after time. I will just finish by thanking all of you and thanking all the members of the IE Club. It's been 20 years for our journey. We are present in 6 countries, more than 10,000 people engaging on a yearly basis. 6 countries with Paris, Beirut, Boston, Lisbon, Montreal, and Tel Aviv. And finally, may I remind that there are 5 communities working together towards innovation and entrepreneurship, I&E. And the 5 communities are the research centers, the large corporate, the large funding members, institutional states, bringing talent and money into sometimes in a social way. And then finally, the growth partners such as private equity and others. And all those 5 members are the ingredients of the IE Club. Thank you very much. And I will turn it to you, Arnaud, maybe for the final word.
Well, over time, so I won't say that, but thank you very much to all, right? Obviously our speakers, great insights. Sarah, obviously for moderation. And then thank you, Maurice and Alex for being here as well. So thank you for the event. Looking forward to the next one on April 26th, so don't miss out. And it will be a very different exercise talking about logistics. And I think that's going to have a clear link with what we talked about today with the environment impact and some other aspects. So looking forward to that too. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.